New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Inclusive Church. My name is Tracy Brown. I'm so glad that you have joined me today, where we take the time to recommit to what it means to really be inclusive. And this month, we're really doing something that's both practical and proactive. And that is preparing for Pride Month. And as I said last week, I know everybody doesn't celebrate or honor Pride Month in the month of June, but the vast majority do. So we're taking the month of April to remind you and then also to give you some tips about how to make your celebration of Pride Month be grounded in principle and be effective and engaging. So if you've been around for a while, you know that's exactly what we do on the Inclusive Church Show. We explore what does it really mean to build spiritual communities that reflect all of who we are. So buckle up. If you are a leader in a spiritual community, I don't mean just minister, leaders who show up in so many different ways. If you're a leader in a spiritual community and you are committed to effectively engaging members and guests and people who live in your geographic area, if you're committed to effectively engaging LGBTQ plus communities, not just as an outreach strategy, not some special program, but as a natural expression of spiritual truth. So today we're going to go straight to the foundation of spiritual truth, not tactics, not the language guides, not the event planning, because if inclusion is not rooted in principle, it will always feel forced, it will always feel or be inconsistent, and it will come across as performative. But when your work is rooted in principle, it becomes necessary, it becomes inevitable. And so let's talk a little bit today about the spiritual imperative related to recognizing, honoring, engaging, and valuing people who identify as LGBTQ or plus. And last week we did talk about some of the language. So if you missed the show last week, then please, jump in and check out that show. We talked about the labels and some of the language. But today, let's start with this. In New Thought and in metaphysics in general, we teach that there is one life. That life is God. That life is expressing as all people. And every person is a unique, individualized expression of the divine. Now, if we actually believe that, not just intellectually, but operationally, then exclusion becomes a contradiction to the foundational principles of what we teach. It's not a difference of opinion. It's not a contradiction unless you don't believe that God is everywhere and in everyone. So it's imperative that we create environments where all people are able to feel welcomed and seen and included, not from a place of, oh, we're the inclusive church, but they feel included in decision making. They feel included in developing the direction. They feel included because they're asked for their input. So we can go to the very basic foundation and be like, okay, if we truly believe this, right, only one life and every person is an individualized expression of that life, that's a baseline. So the question that we want to ask is not, should we include people who identify LGBTQ+? That's not the question. The real question is, are we willing to live what we say we believe? Are we willing to live what we say we believe? Are we willing to walk our talk? Or is it just talk? Take a breath. So the principle of oneness, right? Oneness means there's no separation in spirit. Oneness means that there is no other, because there's only spirit and each one of us is an individualized expression of that. So when LGBTQ plus individuals experience exclusion, discomfort, dismissal in spiritual spaces, what's actually happening is a denial of oneness. So some of you know one of the books I've written is Stained Glass Spirit, where oneness does not require sameness. So oneness in practice actually means that we are including all kinds of people, and that people don't have to all be the same in order to be an actively engaged member of our spiritual community or our church. Oneness demands that we move past this archaic idea of tolerance. So if people in your community are talking about, well, we tolerate difference, then you've got some work to do. It's an invitation to have some really great conversations, because tolerance still implies distance, distinction in a negative way, like compartmentalization, whereas oneness requires recognition of the unique way that each person shows up, and then to use that to create unity, to demonstrate unity. Okay, so another key principle, oneness, divine identity, right? That every person is an individualized expression of the divine, not a corrected version, not a semi version, but an unfiltered version, an unfiltered, individualized version of God, an authentic expression of God. So when someone lives openly in their identity, whether that's their sexual identity or their sexual orientation or their gender identity, that is not a deviation from spirit. It cannot be. So our churches should be the safest place for each individual to express their authentic identity. Our churches should not be the place that's restricted around any form of identity. And just right now, we're focusing specifically on how we apply that as we engage with people who identify as LGBTQ. Ooh, what else do I think of? I think about the foundational concept of love. Right? So if we love all that spirit has created, it's pretty hard to say a whole category of people, we don't love them, we don't welcome them, we don't engage with them just because of the category or the label or the identity group they are a part of. So if your church is committed to love, then that's another way you can talk about whatever it is you plan to do during Pride Month, because it is grounded in a spiritual principle that most people in your community have already been exposed to, which is love. If you are acting and behaving in alignment with spirit, then you are delivering or demonstrating the principle of love in your engagements with all kinds of people. And here's where many churches miss the mark, right? They feel loving internally, but they don't express that love in ways that are visible, in ways that are tangible, in ways that create an experience. So in their heads, or maybe in their hearts, they feel like we're a very loving community, but people can't feel it, so it's not really operational. And that's a big place to work, to do some work. So we can look at oneness. We can look at every person as a divine, a unique, individualized expression or divine identity. We can look at the principle of love. We can look at the principle of creative expression, that life expresses itself in an infinite number of ways, right? That whole idea that diversity is not an accident or a mistake. Diversity is a divine idea. And we, in our human form and human experience, we get the opportunity to deal with or to use the diversity that exists, the many different ways that individuals and communities express, because they are all expressing the one. So when we are faced with people in the LGBTQ plus community and we may be uncomfortable, right, we get to expand our experience in order to demonstrate our principles: love, unity, harmony, wholeness, oneness. The correct spiritual response is not control. The correct spiritual response is reverence, feeling and demonstrating reverence for the authentic way that people are showing up that's different from the way you show up or the identity group that you are personally comfortable with or that you identify with, and creating a community where you build the capacity for people throughout the congregation to have that same reaction, that curiosity that is like, this is how the infinite is showing up. This is how the infinite reveals more of itself to me besides the way that I am revealing the infinite in physical. So this is where many of us as leaders get stuck because we know it here and we feel it here. We're not trying to exclude anyone. I mean, not consciously, but I've said it many, many times before. Intention does not always equal impact. And we are as responsible for the impact of our actions as we are for our good and noble intentions. So the breakdown usually happens when we think, well, we welcome everyone. Everybody's welcome here, but we haven't changed or adapted anything in the environment that reflects, in this case, that LGBTQ plus community members are truly welcome. Another thing which, if you've been with me enough, you've heard it, we don't want to offend anyone, so we say nothing at all. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Well, I might offend someone, so I don't really understand it. Wrong goal. I mean, ultimately, when we're really doing this work in a committed way and we are truly engaging with and expanding, along the way, I'm going to say something at some point that's going to offend someone unintentionally. However, that's where the growth happens. Let me learn from that. Let me understand what I should have said or what I could do next time so that that becomes a part of what I do. So if I get feedback that I have offended someone based on a cultural norm, an identity group, or a cultural norm, not just personality, but in that context of it's a cultural thing I don't know because I'm not a member of that group, then I want them to tell me. I want to be in the conversation so that I can actually learn more and do better next time. Oh, we focus on spirituality, not identity. So it doesn't matter what anyone's identity is. But you know what? It does matter because it matters to them. Identity, inclusion, we're inclusive. And inclusion requires specificity of seeing the differences and then bringing the value of those differences into the way that we work with each other, into the way that I teach a class, into the way that I speak on a Sunday, into the music that we use. If you really are going to be inclusive, there's got to be some specificity to specific groups, to different groups. And there's got to be visibility. And there's got to be embodiment of spiritual principle in the ways that you do that. If LGBTQ plus individuals have to guess whether or not they belong or are welcome or will fit in or will be valued or will be included, then you've got a little bit of work to do. So, let me watch the time. So we will talk about some specific programs, but this is about principle today, not programs, not events. And so I want you to be thinking about how do you move from welcome to recognition? That people don't just feel welcome, but they feel like you recognize what's important to them. People should see themselves in the leadership, in your language, in the environment. And you can audit for that by periodically looking at the images you use, the music you use, the stories that you tell if you are teaching or speaking. You can look at the website, your social media posts. Are there images? Is there language that makes it clear that people who are in any of the LGBTQ plus identity groups, that they will see something that lets them know and know that it is in the context of your belief in oneness, not your outreach to look good in the community. And that's a really big one. Oh, we'll do this, or we'll put up a rainbow flag in June, but it's not a part of what you do all the time. And even though it's up, it's like, oh, we do this in June. What does that have to say about what you do the rest of the year? So these are just some things to think about, really. That's all. Just some things for you to think about, for me to think about. And I've been thinking about it a lot because I want us to do more than just gather a bunch of people and go to the Pride parade. Like, that can be really performative if, as you're gathering people, you're not educating them about why this is important in your church. That can be performative, going to the Pride parade or even marching in the Pride parade, if people think it's because we've got to fight for gay rights, which is not a false statement, but it is, we are standing up for a community that we know is an expression of God. That's a different message than this group has been marginalized and we're going to make it better. We're going to go in and demonstrate that they're okay with us and they should be okay with everybody else. No. You might be able to do that once people are really grounded from a spiritual perspective. Otherwise, they will think that it is just a part of a political process, and you are likely to lose a number of people in your community who are not as deeply grounded in spiritual principle as you might be. Because for you, it makes perfect sense. And you know it's grounded in spiritual principle. But if you are not constantly telling people and showing people that, they will evaluate it based on their level of knowledge and understanding of metaphysics. And this is a place that many of our leaders miss. So, okay, my time is up for today. We're doing this whole month on preparing for Pride Month. And I hope that you will join me again next week, because inclusion really can't be something that we just decide to do, like it's a big activity. It's just a program that we do. I want us to bake in the spiritual principle, because when we do that, we realize that being inclusive of this group and all other groups is something that we cannot run from. We cannot avoid it. We cannot pretend that it's an extra or an elective way of being in the world. So I'm going to get off of my soapbox now. I hope you heard at least one or two things today that really settles in with you and that you might try or practice or have a conversation with someone else. So over the next week, you might ask yourself this question: where might I be out of alignment with what I say I believe as it relates to engaging the LGBTQ plus communities in my church or in the activities of the church? Where am I out of alignment with my spiritual principles and beliefs in the ways that we engage with LGBTQ plus individuals and the LGBTQ plus community? And I'm laughing because, right, I use the acronym so much. And so it's hilarious to me when my mouth and my brain don't work. And I'll give you a little behind the scenes secret. It's like in that moment, I'm thinking about, oh, how am I going to close the show? And how do I get over to the graphics so that I can press the button for the closing video? So I apologize for being slightly distracted. And I hope you will give me a little bit of grace and come back next week as we continue this conversation right here on the New Thought Media Network, Tuesdays, noon Mountain Time, the Inclusive Church. Bye for now.
Thanks for watching The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.